Hi, everybody, and welcome to our complimentary webinar today, which is brought to you in partnership from Auscontact and Cognigy. A fantastic session today, really interesting and topical, given everything we are hearing about AI and ChatGPT. The session today will explore the future of the contact center and is about really giving your contact center a power up using generative AI and Cognigy AI. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Today's session will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of today's very special guests, Michael and Mick, and we did that intentionally to make it very easy for you all to remember. We hope this session helps generate some thinking in your organisation in relation to the potential that this technology could have for you, but equally just to get you thinking about what this consistent, new and emerging environment can actually mean for your operation and your organisation. To round off the session, we'll have a Q&A period at the end of the webinar, like we always do. If you like, you can keep those questions in the QA chat, and we'll make sure we address those at the end. And I'm so sorry, my dogs are going off at the moment. I'm Fran Southwood, CEO of Auscontact, and I am your moderator for today. We'll run through some housekeeping. Remember to interact with us to really help us make the most and, so you get the most out of the session itself. You're all really familiar with this by now, but if you've got something you want to raise and talk about whilst we're going, hit the raise hand component, but equally you can type your questions in the Q&A or the chat feature, and I'll be keeping an eye on those as I go through, and we'll make sure that we can then either interrupt Michael and Mick as they're going if it makes sense, or we can hold them over to the end. So type them down though when you think of them, because sometimes it's really easy to then get carried away and forget about them by the time we get to the end. But again, I encourage you to all keep that going and participate. I'm going to introduce to you our speakers for today. We have Michael Bradley, who is the Regional Director of ANZ for Cognigy, and we've got Mick Dunbar, who's a Senior Solution Engineer for APAC. I'm going to hand over to Michael. Everybody, I cannot wait to hear, I'm like you, can't wait to hear what the content is today, and really interested in learning a little bit more about all of this emerging opportunity for us. Thanks, Michael and Mick. Good luck with the session.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Fran. And of course, everyone, thank you very much for joining us here today. Very, very excited to host our second webinar in partnership with the Auscontact Association and bring to light something that's obviously very topical at the moment and super exciting to see how this technology is changing the game across customer experience in the contact center, and that is generative AI, which is the technology that underpins what we all know as ChatGPT. Before we dive in, I'll run through a couple of items that we anticipate covering in this session. Of course, we want to understand what generative AI is and its impact on the contact center. We'll go through a little bit of history around AI and then define exactly what generative AI means before we dive into its application inside of the Cognigy AI platform, where Mick will be running through a demonstration of how we've embedded this technology inside our solution to deliver a meaningful impact across your organizations. We'll then show you how this technology can be applied into the contact center. I think that balance between people and technology is the right mix, and we'll show you exactly how we've thought about that in a practical way. And then we'll show you how you can get your hands dirty and play around with our solution as well. It is a little bit of fun, of course. You can really put the technology to the test. And we'll give you an example of how you can do that, of course, through our demonstration. Before we dive into all of that, though, of course, I want to revisit what Cognigy AI is and who we are. We see ourselves as the leading contact center automation platform that is powered by conversational AI. What does that mean? It means that we can provide a holistic solution that orchestrates voice, and chatbots and intuitive handover to contact center agents. The software platform is, of course, very well regarded amongst leading analysts within the space, and it now comes fully integrated with generative AI capabilities. We've all heard about the massive impact that generative AI, large language models, and of course ChatGPT 3 has, and it has become the benchmark of what is possible with state-of-the-art AI. But what does that mean? Before we get started, I'd like to pose a question to you all, of course. We just want to get a bit of a sense of how familiar you all are with generative AI, or ChatGPT as it's known, and how do you think it applies to the contact center? Give you 30 seconds or so to quickly jot down your answers there. Okay, Jess, if we could display the results there. Cool. As anticipated, most of you are aware, how could you not be? It's every LinkedIn post ever and has been for the last 2.5 months or so. Good to see that a quarter of you have actually played around with it. Of course, again, it's easy to sign up and we'll kind of get to that in a second. But again, as anticipated, there's no one that has no idea and there's no one that is expert. It's very difficult to become expert in these technologies, of course. Jess? Right. Now let's get into what is AI. Now, AI has been around as a concept for nearly 60 years. And the definition was coined around 57 years ago. And it is basically an attempt to make machines use language to solve the kinds of problems now reserved for humans and improve themselves. Essentially, that means we've always viewed AI as not something that replaces humans, but empowers humans to get their jobs done in a much faster or more efficient manner. Think of everyone as having a personalized assistant in an AI or bot format. So plant that seed in your mind. This is what someone coined nearly 60 years ago. And it's been a hell of a journey since then. We started researching what AI was back in 1955, and there's been some jumps since then. For those of you who've been around long enough to remember this picture, this is when IBM's Deep Blue, which back then was a supercomputer algorithm, beat Garry Kasparov, in chess. That was the first time we ever saw a computer beat a human at their own game. And that was a giant leap forward from a technological evolution standpoint. Later on, we saw IBM's Watson play Jeopardy, where it absolutely smashed the opponents, again, in their own game. And this is where we started to see voice and natural language coupled with algorithms really power from an AI perspective what was possible. Most recently, or when I say recently, 6 years ago now, we saw Google's AlphaGo, again, an algorithm-based AI engine, beat the world Go champion, one of the most complex and oldest board games in existence. And then, only a few months ago, we saw this little guy appear, and it took the world by storm. And why? Because of its accessibility. What we mean by that is it took a mere few days for ChatGPT to register 1 million users. And to put that in context, it took Netflix nearly 3.5 years to reach that same number with a huge marketing spend. And ChatGPT was just done virally because of how we saw the possibility of AI-powered assistants really empowering each and every one of us, and just at the click of a few buttons or at the tap of a few keys. And that's pretty exciting. And as we saw in the poll earlier, everyone's had a bit of a dabble, or at least is aware of what ChatGPT can do. But we decided to ask it what it thinks it's good at. And these are the top 10 answers that it came up with. Now, all of this is pretty interesting, right? And we start to see some scary stuff at the top, of course, where people can start to use it to write their own articles or even respond to certain essays. And, of course, there's been some hype around how children and students are going to use it for assignments and in the classroom. But if you look down the bottom there, The ninth thing that it thinks it's best at is building responses for customer service. And we agree with that. We do think it's a fantastic tool to be used in customer service, but it's more about how. What can it do? Why can it do it? Why is that meaningful? At its foundation, the underpinning technology is called a large language model, which is a huge data set that brings capabilities into voice and chatbots beyond our imagination. And because it sits as that foundation, it can start to digest information and answer queries in the way that you and I might do that to our friends and family. It is also capable of some reasoning. It understands that even though it's not built for that, its prediction model can give astonishingly accurate answers to seemingly draw logical conclusions that go way beyond the typical chatbot. And right at the top, it can even emulate empathy. Now that's pretty powerful, right? It starts to show some sort of emotive recognition and feelings associated with what you're giving that interaction. And it does so in a way that we might also respond to certain emotions as well, again, to our friends and family and others. So it's a very, very powerful tool. But where do the two play together? Of course, we've got all these different AI technologies, and how do the two work in harmony? You'll see the things that generative AI cannot do. Okay, it's not generic, it can deviate a little bit, it's got no channels, no integrations, it's just a point and shoot, right? If it's sitting on top of a knowledge model, it answers what it thinks it knows best based on that knowledge. This conversational AI can be a bit rigid, it's predefined, there's a specific flow it has to follow, a lot of effort to put that together, and it's not human-like. But where they show weaknesses, the other shows strength. And so when you blend the two technologies together, they work in a nice, not so perfect, but close to perfect harmony, where one's detriments offset the other, and the two become an extremely powerful tool set, particularly in customer experience in the contact center. So with all of that in mind, we'll pose another question. Do you believe that this technology could be utilized within your organization? Not specifically in anywhere necessarily, but just more broadly. Give you a moment to answer that quickly. And Jess, let's show the results. I'm shocked. Overwhelmingly positive, of course, that we all think that there's an application for these technologies. Of course, there's some uncertainty amongst some of you, but hopefully by the end of this webinar today, we can show you how we believe it can be meaningfully implemented within your organizations, particularly in the customer experience and contact center scenarios. So with that, I'll introduce you to Mick Dunbar, our voice and conversational AI specialist. He'll run you through a quick demonstration of how we've married the two technologies together. Over to you, Mick.
Hey, thanks, Michael. That was a fantastic intro. Today, I just want to give you an overview of how you can use the new generative AI features that are available right now in the Cognigy platform. These new features that I'm about to show you allow you to build better automation experiences for both your customers and your agents, whilst at the same time delivering better business benefits like improving your first contact resolution, improving CSAT, and driving a lower average handling time. Let's begin by having a look at how we've used generative AI to speed up the process of both the design and build of these experiences using our existing Cognigy AI toolset. To circumvent any demo god chaos today, I have pre-recorded these demos. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of the webinar if you'd like me to articulate anything in more detail. Let's start by having a look at how we can use generative AI to speed up the process of building bots using the existing conversational AI toolset, including intents, lexicons, flows, and more. Let's start with intents. Intents are at the core of modern-day natural language understanding engines, often referred to as NLU engines. Intents work by providing the bot with a number of example sentences for the user intent, so that it learns how users express the different things that they want to do. We now have integrated generative AI into Cognigy to generate complete intents, including training data from scratch. All right, let's check it out in action. So I'm logged into the Cognigy AI platform. I'm in my NLU model, and I just trained a new model. I click on Create Intent. If I do so, I'm being asked to provide a name and a description. So I want to have an intent that deals with questions around COVID-19. Right, so I'm going to call it COVID-19 policy. And we're going to enter a small description, a short description that helps the generative AI understand what the intent is all about. I then have this example sentence generation box here. It says beta. I flip the switch, pick the number of sentences that I need, and click create. And there we go. I have a bunch of example sentences that are good to go. If I decide that I need more sentences, I can do the same thing again by clicking on the Generate Sentences option. This will take just a minute, and you'll see that there's an additional 5 example sentences being added to our model. We also have the ability to generate lexicons from scratch using generative AI. Lexicons are essentially a list of entities that we can make the bot aware of. These could be names, states, or, as in the example here, airport codes. Lexicon key phrases have a slot, which is essentially their label, as well as an optional synonyms that should be taken into account by the bot. All right, let's generate a lexicon from scratch. So when I click the new lexicon, again, we have to provide a name and a description. So the name in this case is going to be US airport codes, like so. Then we enter a short description telling it what we expect. And again, we have a lexicon generation box. Now we flip the switch. We're okay with 15 entries to get started. And the only thing I still need to do is I need to provide a slot. So I'm going to call it airport codes, like so. Let's click create and see what happens. And there you go. So you see, we have now created this beautiful lexicon, including San Francisco International Airport, Phoenix. Perfect. This looks great. So far, we have had a look at generating intents, including example sentences, and we've had a look at generating lexicons, entities, and synonyms. Let's now take it a step further and look at how we can actually generate a Cognigy flow from scratch using generative AI. The way this works is that we spend a lot of time teaching generative AI how to interpret and how to construct a Cognigy flow from scratch in code. We can now provide it with a description and a name, just like we do with intents and lexicons. Or we can provide it with a transcript of an actual conversation or an example conversation, and it can use that information to create the entire flow, including question nodes with entity validation, including logic, like if statements. And it can even generate code nodes for us with full access to the Cognigy context. All right, so let's try this out. I'm now on a flow node creation screen. I'm going to hit new flow, and I want to generate a bot that converts currency. I'm going to call it the currency converter bot. We're going to add a description. Now I've prepared this description and then did some tests, and it sometimes generates quite an interesting flow, but it's never quite the same, right? Because this is generative AI. So I simply instruct Cognigy to create a bot which lets us convert euros into other currency. The user is then asked for the amount and the target currency, and the bot converts the currency using an average rate in a code node before creating an output. The interesting concept here is that the generative AI has the concept of what a Cognigy code node is, right? So we can explicitly tell it to include certain types of nodes. And that is because we've trained generative AI to take that into account, so it's aware of what a Cognigy flow is and how to construct one. We have 2 options generating. We can either generate it based on the description and the name, or we can use the name and a transcript and an example conversation. All right. There we go. Let's have a look. So we can see it has a welcome message. It's generated the question node very well. It even understood that the question type should be a number because it's asking for an amount. That's excellent. It generates the quick replies. Very good. In this case, it told us to call an API to retrieve the exchange rate for currency and make sure to populate the variable exchange rate. Okay, so this is the point where we would actually do an API request in Cognigy. Or maybe we would use one of the extensions that we have. Great. Then it has a code node where it takes the amount and it takes the exchange rate, and that should be converted. That should be the converted amount, and then I bet it outputs the converted amount with the target currency. Excellent. So it told us to take this API request and replace the variable exchange rate. Okay, so I'm going to just do that. I'm going to go to my settings and add the variable exchange rate. I'm just going to say it's 1.2. I'm going to assume that it's a valid value. So let's try it out. We have the flow here. I'm actually just going to trigger the bot based on the amount of euros. Okay, so let's say it's 200 and it's going to convert it to Aussie dollars. I know the exchange rate's incorrect, but let's see what happens. And it actually works. That's amazing. Great. So we have a fully transactional bot, including quick replies, automatically generated based on a description. So far, we've been looking at generative AI, enhancing existing cognitive features, but sometimes you just want to write your own prompt. So let's have a quick look at how to do that. Now, let's have some fun while doing it. Let's have a look at how this works. So I'm in an empty Cognigy flow, and I have the ability to add a node here that's called complete text. This is what we call the prompt. We click on it, we configure the prompt. And this is the same as if you would configure a prompt for an API request to send something to change it. Right, so we could ask it here to do anything. We could, for example, say, rephrase the following text as if you were a pirate. And then we simply repeat whatever the user typed. We have a whole bunch of options here, right? So we can play with the temperature. There's other parameters here too, like the maximum number of tokens. For now, I'm going to leave this as the default value. And the only thing I need to do is I need to add some output. So I'm going to add a Cognigy say node. And in the say node, I'm going to repeat what the user said, but then reformat it to that of a pirate, right? As per the prompt. So if I'm still using the generative AI output, I'm going to say this. Let me type. I'm in a webinar looking at great features with an amazing audience. That's fantastic. So what we saw there was some amazing features that help us significantly speed up the building of the conversational AI experience, fully embedded into the Cognigy developer experience and utilizing generative AI. But now let's have a look at features that help improve the end user experience. We will start with the demo of Sebastian, one of our most famous Cognigy employees, interacting with the Cognigy Airlines support bot called Sky. Sebastian's in a hurry and wants to rebook his flight for his family. He decides to reach out via WhatsApp. Let's take a look.
Hey, this is Sebastian. I have a family emergency and I need to rebook my flight to London. That's me, my wife, and the 2 kids.
Now, the dialogue between Sebastian and Sky goes on for a little while longer, but I want to bring across 3 aspects that make this interaction stand out. The first one is the fact that this is a connected experience. That is, Sky can be deployed on many different channels, including voice and chat. Many of these channels, like WhatsApp, support multiple modalities. Sebastian and Sky make use of voice, text, and images. Sebastian figured it was easier to summarize his situation via voice. Sky uses Cognigy's ability to receive audio attachments and converts the speech to text to interpret Sebastian's message. Since audio messages can be quite long, we've added the ability via generative AI to summarize the very long audio messages so that Sky knows what to answer. Next. The second aspect that stands out is that Sky is able to reply in a contextualized fashion. She acknowledges that Sebastian told her about her family emergency and empathizes that she will help him get to London as soon as possible. This behavior is not often seen in virtual agents. And the reason is that often this requires bot developers to pre-configure many different scenarios, which is incredibly time consuming. The third aspect that I want to mention is that Sky has a near human level language understanding. Most bots and other programs would fail to detect a concrete amount in the answer that Sebastian provided. But Sky understood that when he said, my wife, and 2 kids, he meant the number is 4. Okay, let's talk about agent assist experience. Cognigy AI bots have the ability to listen in on audio calls and chats in order to provide human agents with real-time support. Let's look at a demo now of Sebastian calling in with a last-minute question about his booking. Here we see that the agent assist experience powered by Cognigy is in Genesis Cloud.
Good afternoon, Mr. Glock. This is Nick from Airline Support. I understand that you have a question about your flight to London. Is that correct?
Yes. So we are in the car on our way to the airport, and we are bringing our cats. And I was wondering if the cat counts as carry-on baggage.
Okay, let me have a look. Yeah, so pets in cabins count as one carry-on item, so you don't need to check them in. They do require a valid passport. Did you update or did you upload a copy of the pet's passport because you're flying to the UK?
No, I knew I forgot something.
Okay, no problem. Let me send you a text message with a link to the travel portal. You can simply upload the documents there. Sending it now.
Yes, I got it.
Okay, great. Do you have any other questions for me today, Mr. Glock?
No, all good.
Okay, you don't have any other items that I can help you with?
No, everything's fine. I appreciate your help.
Okay, great. Then I wish you a very pleasant flight, given the circumstances, and take care.
There's 3 things I need to highlight here. The first one is that the agent started the conversation very well informed. You see that we have this very nice experience that is embedded into Genesis Cloud. And you see that we have widgets in the previous contact experience. We see flight status and we see a profile widget. We also see a custom sentiment at the top that is based on the previous interactions. The second thing that we noticed was that the bot was able to feed the agent relevant information based on the conversation. Based on the inputs from Sebastian, who was calling, we can see a transcript of Sebastian's input here at the bottom. And we see that the bot found a knowledge article and extracted the relevant answer from the article using generative AI. And lastly, we see that the agent had a couple of tools, like sending an SMS message with a link to the user so that Sebastian could upload these documents. You also saw that the bot summarized the conversation and drafted up a Salesforce case. Now, the only thing the agent had to do was approve and click on submit to open the case in Salesforce, at which point the bot sent the information to Salesforce, sending all the relevant information that has been presented by Sebastian. This meant that agents did not really have to do any extensive after-call work. Now let's have a look at behind the scenes. First of all, let me mention that we embrace a composable architectural approach where our platform lives within an existing ecosystem and orchestrates information across different information systems. Our openness helps our customers preserve investments and mix and match technologies that work best for them. In our demo, the customer called from a phone line connected to the Cognigy AI platform via one of our 25 pre-integrated channels, as you see here on the left-hand side. The same experience could be provided on a messaging channel with just a few extra clicks. In order to get something done, the platform connects against over 100 different backend systems, displayed here on the right-hand side. In our example, that was a booking engine. It could also be a CRM or a ticketing system. Now, the amazing conversational experience that you heard are based on native integration with OpenAI's GPT-3 model, offered via Microsoft Azure. GPT-3 brings in creativity and flexibility of the interactions, while Cognigy keeps the conversation on track and limits any AI hallucination through guarding the large language model. And that is the key ingredient to bringing the power of generative AI into the enterprise. Back to you, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you, Mick. It's super interesting to see how the two technologies can be blended in such a meaningful way. And I hope you guys got an insight of how GPT or generative AI, powered by conversational AI, can be practically implemented or adopted within the organization. So with that, we'll pose the third question to you. Are you now convinced that the meaningful use of generative AI can make contacting your business a much richer and more enjoyable experience for your customers? I'll give you a few seconds to answer that question for us. Great. Thanks, Jess, if we can display the results. Awesome. And again, as anticipated, it's good to see that there are a few of you that are actually on this already. That's pretty exciting, and I really look forward to hearing more about that. And of course, everyone else is thinking about how and when and in the near future, what does this implementation experience look like within your organization? Super exciting. So let's wrap up. Large language models and Cognigy AI can deliver three key things, in our opinion, that help your organization. Of course, better voice and chat experiences. We saw through our demonstrations how the two can blend super nicely, particularly in a natural way or a more organic conversational manner, both through the use of text and voice. We've seen the next generation of agent assist, how the agents take or harness these technologies to better execute their roles and become significantly more efficient. And then, of course, at the end there, how do we build these experiences and get these into market as quickly as possible? You know, generally speaking, building these experiences is very complex, convoluted. You need specialists to do these things. With the blend of generative AI inside of Cognigy's low-code experience, of course, we believe that there is a much faster route to success as a result. Again, to wrap up, we've seen a dramatic improvement of overall conversational experiences with considerably low effort. And in summary, what does this mean for your business? We like to frame this up as saying, again, AI is there to help humans execute better, not to replace them. And as Santiago said here, AI will not replace you as a person or a worker. It'll merely increase your ability to do your job better. So organizations that leverage these technologies will be significantly better off and much faster paced particularly within the new world of customer experience, than your competitors will. But how do you use this stuff? Well, if you scan this QR code here, you get access to our trial environment, which of course has all of those beta release features and functions available to use right now. So sign up here, have a dabble in those experiences, and of course, Mick and I are here to answer any questions that you may or may not have, or even guide you through how best to use these new technologies, and of course, the Cognigy AI platform. If you're not ready to get your fingers dirty yet, why not call one of our bots? We actually have the Cognigy AI Clinic available to use, and if you dial any one of those numbers, of course, there's the Australian number third from the top, you can actually interact with trying to book a doctor's appointment. Have a play around with it. Try and be difficult as well. See how the AI engine actually handles you being a little bit unusual or difficult in a conversational manner. It's really interesting to see how the bot actually reacts, and then more importantly, stays on track. And with that, we thank you very much for attending again our session in conjunction with Auscontact Association. We really appreciate you taking the time and look forward to answering any questions you might have. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Mick. That was really interesting, and I think that what I really love about some of the applications that you took us through is that there's multiple applications. Gary's just telling us that QR code goes to a program that's closed, so we'll look into that one, Gary, because everyone that's been here and registered will send something out to anyway, so we'll make sure you get access to it.
Apologies for that.
I think some of the conversation there, particularly around, I think, Mick, you were talking about that AI assist and really where it can drive some efficiencies with after call work and things like that. Probably one of the big things we're hearing in organisations at the moment is, one of the problems with high attrition and, the challenging labour market almost means we're in a permanent learning cycle within a lot of organisations. So they're not getting that tenure maturity that comes with, people sticking around for a long time. So this sort of thing actually can help with the in-call challenge of putting customers on hold. As a customer, I'm probably the worst example of a customer because a lot of things drive me crazy. But, again, that temperature check that says, from an organisational perspective, streamlining that experience, there's multiple pain points. After call work is one, it's a really obvious one when we look at driving down the time it takes to manage from end to end an interaction. But that hold time is also this invisible impact on both a customer and an organisation. So certainly it's got multiple opportunities. Have you guys got any case studies or examples you could take us through that talk to some tangible results that have actually where you're seeing organisations, again, we don't want to go down this path of contact centres being recognised, they're not a cost centre, they're all about value. So how do we make sure that, the value actually opens up space to do more as opposed to cut with a red pen, because there's wait times, there's hold times, there's customers being raced off the call so they can, having to then call back. So there's all sorts of things, but that narrative around value, we'd love to know what other organisations are seeing and how well it's working out for some of them.
Yeah, let me just take the first part of that, Fran, in terms of a little antidote, which is that because AI is assisting in that agent assist piece, where AI is helping the agent, it's actually two-pronged. One is that it's helping the agent get the information that they need to provide back to the customer, the relevant information, and it's helping do that, a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently. So both the agent's happy for that and the customer's happy for that. But the second thing it's also doing is it's actually giving the agent a little bit of breathing space because, typically to search for this information might take 2 or 3 minutes. The customer's grumpy, the average handling times are going up. You're trying to find the right relevant information. So having that information there for the agent allows them to go, great, I've got the information. I'm going to be a hero to this customer by providing the information in a timely manner. but also I can take stock and I can take a bit of a breather here, because the AI has actually assisted me and not actually just, it's not there to try and overwork me. It's there to help me.
Definitely doing the heavy lifting, Nick.
Absolutely.
Which, yeah, I think the other thing too is about, helping to build the confidence in our agents that actually comes with knowing the information they're presenting is correct. The amount of members who talk to us about new starters constantly wanting to check, I want to double check and triple check to make sure the advice I'm giving to customers is correct. They're all incredibly committed to the right outcome. So again, this looks like something that really supports, that process as well.
Absolutely.
We've got a question here from William around how does the generative AI work across different languages or adjust based on local lingo? Great question, William.
So actually it's twofold in the way it can help. I mean, the generative AI can actually do language translation as well. So it can assist in transforming languages from one language to another. And sometimes that's needed to, use APIs or use processing flows in a current language, like doing the processing in English. But it definitely helps. You can have agents now that can, especially in chat, that can handle all of their inquiries in one particular language, even though the customer may come in on different channels, many different channels using many different languages. But you're able to handle the same, able to handle that same experience in a consistent way because of the generative AI and also what conversational AI can do in also, doing language translation as well.
Thanks, Mick. What about now the examples we just saw there? We had a flight, a rebooking of a flight. We then had a support that was picking up policy. The same sort of, and, conceptually, you'll have some queries that are more complex than others. And often it's about the net effect of an individual's characteristics that actually need to generate different components within a response. So it might be about my account and the things about me that then have to be considered for a response. How much longer and how readily, workable is it for this type of application to pick up really complex topics? So I know we're talking a system that's super clever anyway, but when there are complexities in the nature of the individual. So I'm a person, I have different obligations to someone who is next to me, and actually the policy has to be understood in relation to me as a person, almost, with those responses.
Yeah, generative AI is really, really good at finding an intersection between different content. I'll give you an example. So you might have a particular insurance policy. It might describe what you're covered for, and the insurance company has a policy document that states, all the different things and that you're obliged to do and that your policy covers. Now, generative AI is really good at saying, given my current account and given the policy document, can you explain whether I'm covered for, the storm that happened last week where the roof collapsed on my house? And it might, and first of all, it might come back in a very legalese way of explaining it to you. And then you can say to generative AI, no, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. So dumb it down for me, because that's what I need to, that's how I want to explain it to this customer that's clearly having some grief about, the event that just happened. And so this intersection is, one of those real benefits of generative AI.
No, that sounds really good. We've got a question here from Gary, and it goes back to that earlier question you were responding to, Mick, around language. And the question is in relation to how much testing has been done using that translator integration.
So there's been a lot of work done, testing the language translation. The current feel is that the language translation is accurate, whether or not it's actually in the common form enough. Whether or not it's actually, it might be a more formal version of the language than the colloquial that you would expect. But there's plenty of testing being done on the language translation and how effective it is. I unfortunately don't speak any other languages other than English, so apart from a little bit of French.
Well, you can't test it for us. Another question here from Claudia: how is caller verification and privacy considerations? How is that managed, especially around sensitive information, and especially at the moment when we're hearing and seeing lots of media coverage, and in fact, agencies being set up around things like data breaches. So how does it play in with that?
Yeah, of course. Like, the one thing you don't want to do is hand over your personal information to generative AI. So it's not something that you would, I gave you an example before about your account policy plus a product description. You wouldn't actually send that off to generative AI with personal information, but you might anonymize some of the data in that, and then send off a generic question to generative AI to say, how do these two intersect? So yeah, we're definitely conscious of security. With Cognigy, we integrate both to OpenAI, which everybody knows about, but we also integrate through Azure OpenAI, where we have all the, we have got those security controls in place.
Excellent, thank you. We've got another question here, and again, it's an extension of that language, which I think people are loving. How well does the bot work with understanding Aussie sarcasm? Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So that local lingo that I think you referred to earlier.
I was playing around. I get the opportunity to play around with generative AI every day. So one of the things I did last week was I wanted to build a bot that, and I asked it to, I asked generative AI to bring back the prompts in the voice or in the persona of Paul Hogan, using as much Aussie slang as possible. In fact, I wanted it to, every utterance, every response to me, I wanted it to use, have as much Aussie colloquial slang in it as possible. And I could not stop laughing at the type of responses I got. In fact, I then went looking for a Paul Hogan text-to-speech voice so that I could put it with, the famous actor. That's how good a job it did. Now, I could have, especially, I then used those same techniques of saying, I asked it to explain Newton's third law to me in the voice of Paul Hogan using Aussie slang. Very funny. And then I asked it to, can it rephrase the response as if I'm a 5-year-old? And it did that. And then I asked it to rephrase it to me in a story, which it did. And then I asked it to write me a little limerick as the response, which it did. So all of these are gimmicks, but that's how good it is at finding those intersections between the response that you're after and at the tone that you're after, and the length of the response, and what type of language you're looking for.
Sounds like you're having far too much fun, Mick.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, right? Because it does actually then speak to what its capability and potential is. And again, we're still in that same theme. A lot of our members deal with customers who have not got English as their first language. So again, I would expect, given what you've said, that it isn't a problem. So they could.
It's not a problem.
Yeah. And Michael, I thank you. I can see you've put up some details in the chat for everybody. There's a link that you can click on. And thanks, Gary's checked it, so it's already working. Thanks, Gary. But again, I think that, you know, the real opportunity is to go in and have a play and kind of have a look around. And if anyone hasn't been, well, I think we saw at the beginning, most people are having a bit of a dabble and having a bit of fun with this stuff anyway. But it is about, you know, what's that potential and where are those opportunities within your organization that you can actually think about this as a user case and an application that's not just going to help your customers and your front line, but at the end of the day, that helps your brand, your reputation, your organization. I'm just seeing if there's any more questions that anybody might like to throw on the table while we have the two experts in the room here to actually help us with anything like that. Gary, you've normally got plenty of questions for us. Are you working with a lot of, you know, we're definitely starting to see some real growth and take up, obviously, across Australia. And I know we've had some conversations before about, you know, potentially getting some of your partners to maybe talk about case studies with it, you know, with their applications and what they're seeing. So we're going to push you on that one, because I think people love to hear, you know, kind of that journey that organisations have gone through, and where some of the things that, you know, things worked as they thought, or actually there were some unexpected benefits that they hadn't actually considered from an organisation's perspective. So are you hearing more about that, and, you know, sort of got anything you can share with us around, I guess, some use case, you know, work that you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, firstly, just watch this space, of course. The more noise that we've made in the region, of course, we're only a very young company just in general, and particularly within this region. And so, you know, over the last year or so, we've seen some pretty promising take-up of the Cognigy AI solution. And we've got 2 referenceable case studies right now in HIA and Hum Group. So you'll see those being published very shortly, and hopefully much more to come this year, as we've really broadened our application of the solution into the enterprise sphere. So there'll be some really interesting case studies coming out again in the near future as well. Of course, we've got our large global referenceable case studies online as well, and I would love everyone to jump on and have a look through those. But yeah, I think, you know, our core go-to-market, of course, is through our partners. You know, we've seen Datacom, Dirawong, Accenture, and Deloitte really out there beating the drum on our behalf. They can see the use case, as we've sort of seen in the demonstrations today. There's a lot of pain across customer experience in general. You know, we're sort of one of the most prominent ones, both in the contact center and just at an organizational level, is how disparate each one of these systems are amongst each other. Of course, that lack of interconnectivity between each of them makes it very frustrating for organizations, and more importantly, customers, to interact with us as a brand. And so that's a very prominent use case. And then we start to tweak and enhance those experiences, of course, using these cool features like generative AI. And so it's a long journey. Of course, we've been through this before. The starting is the hardest part. You know, we addressed that in the last webinar, but that's what we're here to help with. And so we've seen brands, you know, test this over the course of the last 12 months, experiment a lot with what's possible and what the blue sky opportunity is. But of course, start small, grow, optimize, and expand from there is, you know, the most pragmatic and sustainable way forward. I did just see Gary posted a question as well about the CRM integrations. To address that, we keep all of those extensions, as we call them, up to date. You know, all of the major CRMs, particularly Salesforce, of course, both CRM and Experience Cloud, HubSpot, and even Monday.com. All of those integrations are kept up to date. We have an open Git repository, so all of those extension code is hosted there for people to lean on and leverage, and of course adapt to their organizational requirements if needed. And then of course we are built on that framework that allows you to, again, build your own extensions into the Cognigy AI platform if needed.
Thanks, Michael. And I know we've got some roundtable sessions coming up in the next couple of months where we get to really sort of talk a little bit more about the potential and the opportunities. So really looking forward to those, working with Cognigy again. I'm just mindful of time, and thank everybody for coming along. If there are any additional questions, if you send them through, we'll make sure that we get back to you. We'll pass them on to Michael and to Mick. As they've both said, there's a real opportunity there for you to check in and have a bit of a play and really look at some of those opportunities. And I, for one, will be calling that Australian number and seeing if I can be an incredibly difficult customer. I'm sure I can make it work, and the challenge will be not to spend too much time trying to make it not be able to answer my question. Yeah, thanks very much. And obviously everybody that was registered will send out some information too, so you'll have access to that. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining in. Hopefully we've got you thinking a little bit, and we'll see what's next. Thanks everybody, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Fran.